Hi, everybody. Welcome officially to Real Estate Prospecting, Become a Six-Figure Agent in 60 Days. My name is Chris Linsell. I'm your host. I'm your guide, your Sherpa through the prospecting landscape here. A little bit about me. I am a real estate coach. I'm a technology analyst, an early adopter, especially in the real estate space. I love technology in the real estate space. I'm a licensed real estate agent in the state of Michigan, and of course, I'm a staff writer for theclose.com. Super excited to have you here with us today. Can't wait to jump in on real estate prospecting. This is one of my favorite topics to cover. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. I want to go to our agenda today and look at what we're going to be covering. Okay. Quickly, I don't want to spend too much time here because honestly, I'm excited to get going on the meat. So here's a quick rundown of what we're going to be looking at. We're going to start off with a quick conversation about what prospecting is and then how you do it. Okay, prospecting is a unique form of generating business in real estate. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page there. Okay. After that, we're going to dive right into our 60-day plan to prospecting success. This is it's not rocket science, but it's not easy. All right, it's not complicated, but this is going to be hard. Now, I know that sounds a little mysterious, but I'll explain it to you, I promise. After we get through our 60-day plan, we're going to jump into some Q&A about prospecting with myself, with Emile Laplatinier, who is one of the founding members of The Close, and with our special guest today. Our special guest is Curtis Fenn. He is the president and COO of REDX. Now, REDX is one of the premier providers of prospecting tools in the real estate space. He's got a ton of experience in this area, and I'm super excited to pick his brain, get his take, and hear some of his expertise and knowledge on the topic of prospecting. He's got a lot of cool stuff to share. Super excited to share that with you guys too. After we're done, you're going to leave with a plan for prospecting success, and you're going to leave with a ton of different tools from The Close that you can use to get across that finish line, to make that six-figure goal a reality. You're also going to leave with a special offer from Curtis and the team over at REDX. Really excited to share that with you. And one person is going to walk away with 90 days of free REDX service. Now, just a quick point of clarification. There's a lot to cover today, and I know you're going to have questions. We're excited to answer your questions, but I don't want to stop in the middle of the presentation because I want to make sure we get through all the important stuff. So don't forget, if you've got a question, write it down so you don't forget to ask it later, or just drop it in the chat. Our admins are going to be watching for those questions. They will make sure that I see them later, okay? And speaking of which, we've got two awesome folks working behind the scenes today from The Close. Both Miranda and Lily are working behind the scenes in the control room to make sure everyone is taken care of, okay? And then one other quick note, I did see somebody in the chat ask if this program would work without REDX. And truthfully, it will. There are ways to do this. The REDX tools make this program a lot easier, but you can certainly work through this, work through these steps with lots of different ways. So I'm excited to show you about that. But those REDX tools are really going to be helpful. Like I said, we're also going to be joining our Q&A also is with Emile. I mentioned Emile just briefly before. He's a founding member of The Close, New York real estate guy, really knowledgeable. Can't wait to bring him in on the conversation too. So this is what we're going to be working on today, guys. I think it's time to get started. But before we jump into that 60-day plan, let's just look for a second. As a real estate agent, where our clients come from. Okay, let's establish a baseline here. The first place they come from are our referrals and our repeat business. Okay, this is pretty easy to identify, right? These are the people who we've worked with before or who have been sent to us via our other clients. Okay, these are important clients to have for sure. But early on in our career, there's not a ton of these, all right? You don't have a huge sphere just yet, especially if you're just starting in real estate. And it's tough to generate a consistent flow of business from your referrals, from your repeat clients, unless you've been doing this for a long time. Okay? These clients are important, don't get me wrong, but these are not the clients that we're going to talk about today. This isn't the business that we're talking about today. We also get clients from lead generation. Lead generation is based on inbound communication, right? It's based on programs where people are reaching out to you and saying, hey, I saw something. I'd like to ask you some real estate questions. Great lead generation programs are things like the Zillow Premier Agent program, or working with a company like Property Base to set up web pages where people can come and fill out a form and reach out to you. The key here, this is inbound communication, right? These are folks who are reaching out to you. Lead generation is important. Not gonna say it's not. There's definitely a place for it, but it's very competitive. If you've been a part of Zillow Premier, you know that competition is fierce there, and thus it gets expensive. And you have a finite amount of business that you can do, because once you are run through all the leads you're sent, what do you do after that? So again, lead generation, it's important, but these aren't the clients that we're talking about either. Okay? Prospecting, on the other hand, prospecting is based on outbound communication. It's based on reaching out to folks and making that connection rather than waiting for them to reach out to you. This is what we're going to be covering today. This is what we're going to base our 60-day plan on. So what is real estate prospecting exactly? Real estate prospecting is a strategy of outbound communication that creates warmer, more reliable leads more often. Warmer, more reliable leads more often. Let's take a look at what that means. Okay. Real estate prospecting. Why is that great? Why is real estate prospecting a good thing? Well, there's a few reasons. One, it's inexpensive. Compared to our other lead generation methods, real estate prospecting is relatively inexpensive because you use tools in order to reach out to these folks, and you can reach out as much as you want. There's no cap on how much outreach you can do. The harder you work, the more outreach you do, the more successful you're going to be. This is a complete, there's a complete correlation here between how hard you work and how successful you can be. And the leads you get from prospecting are close to organic leads. And if you're not familiar with that term, an organic lead is a lead that has come your way simply by virtue of you being you. It's not coming your way because of an ad on Zillow or an ad on Facebook. It's not coming your way because somebody's, aunt's cousin's boyfriend said, oh, you should call this guy. He's a realtor. He can help you. These are folks who are reaching out and saying, we've had a relationship. I like what you're doing. I like the way that you do business. I want to work with you. These are really loyal, really dedicated clients. These are folks that you want to work with. So there's lots of good things that prospecting has going for it. And it's a kind of a mystery why others don't do it. Actually, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not much of a mystery. Real estate prospecting is hard. Here's why people don't do it. And I'm going to be totally upfront with you guys. I was one of these people for a while. All right? I was afraid of rejection. When your prospecting strategy, when your business strategy is based on reaching out and talking to people, you're going to hear no a lot, every day, every hour sometimes, okay? If you are afraid of hearing the word no, if you're afraid of rejection, prospecting is going to be really challenging, okay? Another reason why others don't prospect is that you have to do it consistently. If you can't set aside time every working day to prospect, if you're just doing hit and miss prospecting, chances are you're just going to be doing miss prospecting, okay? You have to do prospecting consistently in order for it to be effective. And you know, I worked as a full-time real estate agent. I still work as a real estate agent. I know you got a full plate as a full-time agent. It's hard to add something else to that plate, which is why some people don't do it. But you need to consider prospecting. You need to do prospecting, because by focusing on real estate prospecting, a real estate agent gains control over their own future and doesn't rely on someone or something else to make them successful. So now that we know what prospecting is and why we should consider it, let's take a look at the basic strategy. This is just the wireframe. This is the real general 30,000-foot view of how you're going to use prospecting to get yourself to $100,000 a year. Here's step one. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to identify likely clients. Prospecting isn't about just reaching out to anybody that has a phone or a mailbox. No, prospecting is about identifying likely candidates that would be great clients for you. People like owners of expired listings or owners of for sale by owner listings. Owners in really great neighborhoods that you'd like to represent, or even likely buyer candidates. That's the first step, is you have to identify who these likely clients are. The second step is you make contact with them. You reach out to them. And this is where things start to get a little tricky, because first of all, this is where agents start to hear no. That's where that rapid heartbeat starts. That's where my anxiety used to kick up until I learned how to get past that. And we'll talk about that. This is also where we start to wonder, how do I make contact with these people? Do I call them? Do I send them a letter? Do I try to find an email address and email them? Do I just show up at their door? What do I do? There's some anxiety around this. But step two, we're going to make contact with these clients. Step three is you start to build a relationship through regular communication. And I know that this sounds a little counterintuitive, but that communication can be very one-sided, especially at first. You may not get any response whatsoever. But believe it or not, if you are making regular communication outreach to folks, and you are providing value with every message that you send, you are beginning to build a relationship. Establish that regular routine. Establish a regular routine of providing value. And even if they haven't responded to you yet, you are starting to build a relationship. And that leads you to step four, which is nurture these relationships until it's time for a transaction. Okay? Once that relationship has been established, again, even if it's still one-sided, you are nurturing your prospects until they're ready to become clients. So this is the 30,000-foot view, right? This is really general. Let's look at it a little bit more specifically. Okay, we got to get down a little lower to the ground here. But before we do that, you're probably asking yourself, Chris, is this prospecting, is this effective? Is this worth it? Is this worth my time? I know I asked myself those questions early on in my career too. And the answer is yes, but you don't have to take my word for it. Let's look at a couple of case studies to help back this up. The first study is from Baylor University. The business school there, Keller Center for Research, did a study about prospecting in real estate. Specifically, they did a study about cold calling. Now, I know some of you just had an anxiety attack when I said cold calling. Sorry about that. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Cold calling is something that agents have some agents anyway, have a real challenge with, but it's a real tool if it can be done correctly. Baylor set out to understand the effectiveness of cold calling. And here's what they did. They gave real estate agents phone scripts and phone lists, addresses, lists of property owners that they knew hadn't been prospected in the last 5 years. And they said, call these people. Make 1 hour of calls a day, 7 days a week for 2 weeks. 160 agents started this experiment, and only 50 were able to finish. Why? Well, because prospecting is hard, because it's hard to do consistently, because it's hard to stay motivated. But for the 50 agents who did complete the program, there were some huge benefits and some really interesting results. Here's what they found. They found that of the 50 agents, they made a total of 6,264 calls. 28% of those calls were answered, meaning somebody picked up the phone or somebody returned a message if a voicemail was left. 55% of those calls went unanswered or unreturned, and 17% of those calls went to non-working numbers, meaning they were either wrong numbers or disconnected numbers. Those 28% of calls that were actually answered, that's 1,774 of them over the course of those 2 weeks. 19 listing appointments were set and 11 referrals were made. Huge. This tells us that of those 6,264 calls that were originally made, for every 209 of those calls, a listing appointment was set or a referral was made. Keller Center found the calling 7.5 hours of cold outreach is going to get you a listing appointment. Pretty encouraging for me. This tells me that all of that fear of no, looks like we might be having an audio problem here. I'm going to keep going here. If you, admins, are we having some sound trouble here? If you can hear me, go ahead and shout out that you can hear me in the chat. And if you, well, it looks like we do have somebody, a couple people. Okay, yeah. If you're having trouble with the sound in the chat, feel free to go ahead and hit reconnect. I guess if you are having trouble, you wouldn't hear that message. Great. Okay, we're going to keep plowing through. Admins, if you're having problems, if you can help address those folks who are having audio problems, that'd be great. Anyway, back to the Keller Center here. Basically what this tells us is that if you can get through 208 no's, then you get a listing appointment. That's encouraging. That tells us that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now, this is an awesome result from high level, but let's look at what it means on the ground level at an agent, a working agent, not a university study, a working agent. Trent Sims tripled his business in 1 year by prospecting. Now, I know Trent Sims. He's from my hometown. I've actually worked with him. He's a relatively new agent, and he went from 5 closed transactions in 2017 to 18 closed transactions in 2018. And here's how he did it. Like I said, he's a relatively new agent. Trent just got his real estate license in 2017. And when he got his license, he took the traditional path. He said, I'm going to use a program like Zillow, and I'm going to work my sphere. And I'm going to make as many connections as I possibly can. But that was a struggle because Trent's a relatively young guy. He has a relatively small sphere, and he was only able to close 5 deals. He knew he could do better. He wanted to do better. And so he said, in 2018, I'm going to make prospecting my game. And here's what he did. He surrounded himself with like-minded prospectors. He joined a team of agents, all who were big on prospecting. And he changed his mindset away from being anxious and concerned about people saying no to him to one of value. He recognized that he had information that could benefit the people he was reaching out to about the value of their home, about the value of their community. And if he can make a connection, he can share that value with them. So he stopped being afraid of no, and he started being excited about the folks he could share a yes with. He was meticulous about his research. He learned everything he could about each individual neighborhood, and he always asked for a handshake. If somebody had responded positively to any of his messages, he always reached out and said, I'm going to be in your neighborhood, dropping something off at another home. Maybe I could just swing by, shake your hand, give you a business card, make a connection. And Trent used REDX. We'll talk about the tools that he used. Trent went from 5 closed deals in 2017 to 18 in 2018 by using prospecting. We've done a really cool article, an interview with Trent, and we're going to link to that article so you can read more about Trent's story, as well as get the full text of the Baylor study, both links that you'll get after the webinar today. So if you're interested in reading more about these, we got your back. Okay, so we know basically what prospecting is. We know basically what our plan is, and we know that there's evidence that it works. Let's talk about the plan. We've looked at it at the 30,000 foot view. We've looked at it at the 10,000 foot view. It's time to get on the ground and start making the plan happen. Here's how we do it. Step one, you're going to call for sale by owners and expired listing owners every day. Every day. Now look, this is not rocket science. If you guys have been in the real estate game, even if you haven't been in the real estate game, chances are you know that for sale by owner sellers and expired listing owners are great leads. These are folks who have said to the world, we want to sell our house, we want to sell it now, we're having trouble, somebody needs to help us. That somebody can be you. You are going to start by prospecting these property owners every day. And the reason you got to do it every day is because you have to call these folks the moment their property expires or the moment their for sale by owner hits the market, or as close to that moment as you can. And the reason behind this is it's not a state secret that these are great leads. And so these property owners are going to get a lot of calls from a lot of different agents. And if you are 15th, 20th, 25th in line, chances are you're not going to convert that lead. So if you set time aside every day to call the newest for sale by owners and expired listings, you are going to get some results. How do you go about doing that? Well, there are some tools. Like we said, our sponsor for this webinar, REDX, has two tools that are perfect for this task. The expired listings tool links up with your MLS, and it brings a list of all the expireds every day into your REDX interface. It also has a for sale by owner tool where it scours the internet and it brings a list of all the for sale by owners into your interface every single day. But it doesn't stop there. It also provides contact information for the owners there. We'll get in a little bit more about that with Curtis from REDX towards the end of the presentation. You might be asking, how do I talk to these people? Well, the close is going to provide you with 3 listing scripts for expired listings and 3 for sale by owner scripts that you can take, that you can tweak, you can make your own, you can customize, and put these resources into action so you won't feel tongue-tied and you won't be worried about what you're going to say on the phone. If you set aside 30 minutes a day, you're going to get you'll have time for about 75 expireds or for sale by owners every week. If you can convert just 3% of those calls into listing appointments, you are yielding yourself 2 listing appointments a week. 2 listing appointments a week. Just by setting aside 30 minutes a day to call these for sale by owners and expireds. That right there is an incredible value. But that is just the tip of the prospecting iceberg. Step 2 to our program is to find 1,250 homes that you want to pursue as listings. Whoa. Let's stop just for a second. 1,250. Yes, you're reading that correctly. 1,250 homes that you want to be the listing agent for. It sounds like a ton. I get it. But it has to be a lot because you are going to get aggressive about this. You are going to dive into the neighborhoods around your community, and you're going to come up with a list of 1,250 homes that you want to be the listing agent for, that you want to represent out to the world. How are you going to go about doing that? Well, by treating it like a real estate farming operation. If you're not familiar with real estate farming, this is essentially identifying neighborhoods and working those neighborhoods, becoming their neighborhood expert. And the Close has put together a fantastic step-by-step guide to real estate farming and to that neighborhood selection, how you go about choosing those neighborhoods and choosing those 1,250 homes. You can go through this guide bullet point by bullet point, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is time consuming. This is going to take a day. You're going to have to set aside a day to make these selections. But once you do, you're going to be running for the rest of your 60 days. You're going to follow our guide step by step, and you're going to put together a list of 1,250 homes. And then you're going to use the REDX GeoLeads tool to get the contact information just like you got in the expired listings and the for sale by owners. Now again, we'll talk more about that GeoLeads tool as we go, okay? But so far, you're going to use all of these great resources the Close is giving you, the scripts and the step-by-step guide to real estate farming. And you can utilize the tools that REDX is providing you to help gather the contact information for these people. Step 3 is, now that you've got all of those 1,250 homes, you're going to start systematically reaching out to these owners every week and ask for their business. Sounds simple. I know it's more complicated than just one sentence on a slide here. So how do we go about doing that? How do we reach out to these folks? There's lots of different ways. You could send them a postcard or a letter. The letter is the first way that we like to reach out to folks. We call this a ground softener here. This is a place where you can, in a non-confrontational way, introduce yourself to these property owners so that when you reach out with a phone call, they already know who you are. Yes, the postcard or the letter, it's not ideal for time-sensitive communication, but the phone is. The phone, our most powerful tool. It's fast and efficient. It's cheap. You get real-time feedback on how you're doing, but it's tough to do well. That's why we provide some scripts. If you connect with somebody on the phone and you get an email address, you can follow up with them then with email. Okay? You can do all sorts of communication with email. You can automate your email. It can be a set it and forget it kind of communication strategy. But if you're like me, you get hundreds of emails every week. They're easy to miss. That is different for text messages. We know text messages are the king right now. High open rates. Over 90% of text messages on average get opened and read. They're great for follow-ups, great for quick conversations. They're tough for complex communication. Most people save that complex communication for phone calls or even for letters. You can follow up with a handwritten note. Really personal, leaves a great impression. Time consuming, that's for sure, but they're never going to forget that handwritten note. And then our most direct form of outreach, the door knock. It's intimidating. I know. If you've ever gotten ready to knock a door, your heart starts beating. You've never done this before. What are they going to say if they open the door? I don't want to be a door-to-door salesman or saleswoman. Guess what? You're not a door-to-door salesman or a door-to-door saleswoman. You are a person with knowledge, with value for those homeowners. You're just looking to share that. I went through those kind of quick, but I have them all on one slide here. So if you wanted to, afterwards, you can print this slide out. You can stick this on your bulletin board and understand the value of each of these. So step 3 was, we're going to reach out to these people. We're going to use these tactics, one way or the other, to reach out to these folks. But you're not going to be alone. We're going to give you, as a part of your resources in this webinar today, texting templates. We're going to give you a softening letter template. We're going to give you postcard suggestions. We're going to give you phone scripts for talking to those GeoLeads. And Cheryl, I know door knocking is tough to master, but we've got a whole list of door knocking tips. Step 4, when someone responds positively to your message, take them out of the prospecting track. They're now your clients. If somebody responds negatively, take them out of the prospecting track. These are cold leads. You don't have to spend time or money on these folks any longer. That was easy. But Chris, we don't have any details. Yeah, we've got the steps, but how do we actually do? What do we do every day? I'm glad you asked. We've got it broken down week by week. This is where things really start to get exciting. Now, before we launch into this, I just need to tell everybody, you know what? Get ready. This is going to be hard, okay? 6 figures is not meant to be attained easily. This is supposed to be hard. This is what separates the rockstar agents in every community with the ho-hum agents in every community. Those rockstar agents, they work. They get out there, they pound the pavement, they do the work. Here's how you're going to do the work. Week 1, this is the first week of our prospecting game. We're going to start by calling our for sale by owners and our expireds every day. Remember, we talked about that. That was step 1. Call those folks every day. Set aside 30 minutes every working day, Monday through Friday. Call your for sale by owners and your expireds. Then you're going to do your geo research. Remember we talked about those 1,250 homes? Week 1, you're going to set aside a day. I don't know what day it is for you guys. For me, the day is Tuesday. Monday is always a very productive, good day for me. Tuesday, I have a hard time getting going sometimes. I would set aside Tuesday to do my geo research. 8 hours. I'm gonna lock myself in a room with the REDX prospect or GeoLeads tool. I'm gonna pick out 1,250 homes, get them all on a list. Also in week 1, we're gonna send out our first ground softening letter. Remember we talked about that. That's that letter that you can send out to these neighborhoods to introduce yourself before you reach out more directly. You're going to send them to the first 250 names on your 1,250 home list. Group A, 250 homes. You're going to send out a letter to. And here's how much it's going to take. 2.5 hours for your expireds and your for sale by owners. 8 hours for that geo research. It's going to take a day, but it's going to be so worth it. And 3 hours to send out that letter. Now, you might not take 3 hours to send out a letter, but set aside the time here because it takes time to address, to get all the addresses, get all the stamps. If it takes you less, great. But week 1, you're investing 13.5 hours. Pretty good. Week 2, this is when the rubber really hits the road. Of course, we're going to start by calling our for sale by owners, calling our expireds, and we're going to start making our first round of calls. Remember that group that we sent a letter to in week 1? We're going to call them in week 2. We're going to say, hey, I sent you guys a letter. This is Chris with Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate. I sent you a letter last week introducing myself. Real estate is really happening right now. Your neighborhood is one of the most sought after neighborhoods in our community. I'd love to share with you what we can do for you, what my team can do for you if you're interested in selling your property. And you're going to send out a second letter to Group B, to the next 250 people on your list. Send out a letter. 2.5 hours in week 2 for sale by owners and expireds. We know that. 5 hours to make those 250 calls, and another 3 hours for your softening letter. 10.5 hours in week 2. Remember that those leads we were talking about, those 2 appointments a week that you're getting just from your expireds and your for sale by owners? Well, now let's add 250 geo calls per week. Let's say you're converting those at 2.5%, which honestly is pretty low considering the fact that you've already sent these folks a letter. They already know who you are. If you can convert just 2.5% of those 250 calls, you're up to 6 appointments a week just from your geo calls. And we're just getting started here, guys. Week 3, you know where we start. Can't get away from starting without our for sale by owners and our expireds. You know that happens every day. We're going to send out our third ground softening letter to our third group of 250 people. We're going to make another round of calls to the people we sent a letter to in week 2. But in week 3, we add a text message to the plan of attack here. Now, to be clear, this text message is going to people who didn't respond to your letter, people who didn't respond to your phone call. We're going to reach out to them with a text. Maybe they're not phone call people. Maybe they're not mailbox people. Maybe they're millennials who just want you to text. You're going to invest 2.5 hours expireds and for sale by owners, 5 hours for those geo calls, 1 hour to send those texts, and that 3 hours for the softening letter. Now, let's say you sent out 140 texts, which wouldn't be out of line. That'd be about right. If you converted just 2% of those into listing appointments, you'd be picking up 3 listing appointments. Now, you might be asking, how in the world am I going to send 140 texts in 1 hour? Well, you could send them manually, but that's definitely going to take you longer than 1 hour, and your thumbs will be totally numb by the end of that. I suggest using some sort of mass texting tool. Some CRMs, like Property-Based, for instance, have a texting function built right into their contact option, which is great. But there's also mass texting services. Slick Text is one of those. You upload a phone list, you put in the message that you want to send, and it will blast it out to all of those recipients all at once. Super easy. I like Slick Text because they offer 50 texts for free every month. Clearly, you're going to need more than 50 a month, but it's good to help try it out before you plunk down a credit card on it. Truth be told, I don't really have allegiance to a single mass texting tool, but I do really like that free option for 50 texts from Slick Text. So this step here, where we're going to send out these text follow-ups, this is key, and get a tool to help yourself with this. Week 4, of course, for sale by owners and expireds. I know that. We're going to send out our letters. We're familiar there. We're going to send out our call or make our calls. We know that. We're going to send out our text messages, and we're going to drop a postcard in the mail. Now, just a reminder, this postcard is going to people who didn't respond to your letter, they didn't respond to your phone call, they didn't respond to your text. Maybe these are postcard people. We're adding an hour for your postcard, 12.5 hours in week 4. As far as a postcard sending tool, we like Prospects Plus. Prospects Plus is a postcard service. They actually do all sorts of marketing stuff. But the thing I like the most about Prospects Plus is their templates are easy to work with, and you can upload your list, and Prospects Plus will actually send the postcards for you. So can't get much more convenient than that. But there's lots of postcard options out there. We like Prospects Plus, but if you have one that already works for you, definitely keep using that. If you can convert just 1% of your postcards, let's say you sent 100 postcards, 1%, that's another listing appointment. And the listing appointments are really starting to rack up. We have 12 listing appointments just this week from all this work. And granted, it's a lot of work, but man, that reward is huge. Week 5, of course, for sale by owners and expireds, of course, we're going to send out our ground softening letter. We're going to make our calls. We're going to send out our texts. We're going to send out our postcards. And finally, we are going to get to door knocking. Now, this is where things get a little scary for most people. Door knocking, we're going to set aside 3 hours to door knock. Now, granted, door knocking is challenging, and you may not be able to knock all of the doors of the people who haven't responded, but pick the homes that you feel like would be the best opportunities. Knock your doors for 3 hours, get in 20 door knocks, convert just 5% of those. Just pick up one extra appointment. And all of a sudden, our list of appointments are going crazy here. Week 6, we're on the downside now. You'll notice we're still starting with our for sale by owners and our expireds, but we're not sending out a ground softening letter. We're just making calls, sending texts, sending postcards, and we're door knocking. But you can see, we were at 15.5 hours for week 5, now down to 12.5 hours. Week 7, coming down even further. You know where we start every single week, but now we're just sending texts, postcards, and door knocking. All about systematic follow-up. 7.5 hours for week 7. Week 8, we're going to call it for sale by owners and expireds, obviously. Then we're sending postcards and door knocking, down to just 6.5 hours. Week 9, this is the last week. You made it. All you got to do is call those for sale by owners and expireds. That should be rote memory by now. And then just knock the last round of doors. 5 hours. 5.5 hours, excuse me. We put it all on one slide here. Again, this is bulletin board material. Great little timeline you can set up. Keep yourself and your team motivated if you've got a team. This is what you're going to be doing every week. Let's talk about some results. I'm really excited to get Curtis involved in the conversation here, but let's just talk about, really quickly, let's talk about some results before we get Curtis in and start talking about what REDX can do to help here. Based on that Keller Center data, if you made 1,250 calls, based on their ratios, you get 6 listing appointments out of that. We know that your conversion rate is going to be higher because you're not doing cold outreach. You've already sent them a letter, so they know who you are. But let's just assume 6 appointments and you close half of them into listings. That's 3 listings. These listings sell. Let's just pick a number, $200,000 at 3% commission. You just picked up 18 grand in GCI for 9 weeks. But we don't stop there. We've got the listings that we picked up through our text messages and our postcards and our door knockings. Let's say we convert 50% of those appointments. That gives us 10 more listings. And let's say we convert 50% of the appointments we get from expireds and for sale by owners. That's 4 more listings. You get $84,000 more GCI just from this section alone in 9 weeks of prospecting. That's a total of $102,000 in GCI for just 9 weeks. And if you did this 5 times, 45 weeks a year, $500,000. Now I get it. I get it that this is an extremely challenging and for some folks exhausting program, but you can totally do it. And here's where I get most excited. All it's going to take you is 17 closed deals. Think about all the leads. You were getting 13 listing appointments a week at the height of this program. If you can just close 17 deals based on 13 listing appointments a week, you're going to get to $100,000 in GCI. Sounds great, but where do I get all these leads? That's when REDX comes into play. And I want to take time right now to introduce our special guest for the webinar. He is the COO of REDX. He's the president of REDX. His name is Mr. Curtis Fenn. Curtis, are you with us here?
I am. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Fantastic. Curtis, can you tell us all a little bit, before we get into the tools, can you give us a really brief overview? What is REDX? Who are you as a company? Who do you serve, and what is your company mission here?
Sure, thanks. So everything we do is about helping real estate agents build sustainable business. And hopefully if people are paying attention to what you taught them, this is a sustainable business. This is predictable. This is something that they can pick up and start to do. Now, they're basing their numbers off a study and a little bit of guessing, and even some of the numbers I think you're lowballing.
Mm-hmm.
But once they start to prospect, they would know their numbers,
mm-hmm.
and they would know exactly how many calls, how many hours that they need to put in to get the output that they're looking for, which creates a sustainable and predictable business. Everything that REDX does is about helping them do that, right? So we want agents to be focused on the money-making activities in their business, the act of calling and talking to people, rather than doing data research. Let us computer guys do that, and we'll do all the research and find the information so that the real estate agents can focus their time on what they do best, which is having conversations about real estate.
That's great. That's awesome. Now, I know that I was curious about this when I started using the REDX platform. All of you mentioned that you and the team are the computer guys there. I've always wanted to know, can you give us a little peek behind the REDX curtain? Where do you get the information for these property owners? Like, if I've got one of your tools, I get a profile with a name and telephone numbers. Where does that information come from? Where do you guys get that from?
Sure. This is kind of a Wizard of Oz curtain.
Okay.
A little bit, right? Because you
Yeah.
peek behind the curtain, you go, "Oh, is that it?" And that's not to devalue what we do, but the point is saving time. So if somebody wanted to on their own go into their MLS, find the expired listing, get the information they can from there, but then go into the tax records and search the information there and find out who the owner of record is, and then go into Google and white pages and people search and Facebook and everywhere that has information and spend the time to do that, they could do that. Now, this is like anything in business, where because of the quantity in which we do that, because of the data scientists we have on staff, because of our algorithms, because of the proprietary databases that we have access to that may not be public to everybody, we can do what somebody may be able to do on their own in hours. We can do it better in seconds.
That is really valuable. Yeah, that right there, just the time saver. I know as a full-time agent, my time is the most precious resource that I have. And so a tool that gives me the opportunity to save some of that time and devote it in other places is really valuable for me.
Right.
We talked about the expired lead tool, the for sale by owner tool, and the geo leads tool in the presentation today, but we've got another tool on the screen here, the Storm Dialer. Can you tell us a little bit about Storm Dialer?
Yeah, but right before that, if it's okay, Chris, I want to jump in on the geo leads thing.
Oh, sure,
because I bit my lip during your presentation.
Okay.
I do think people, the expectation of spending a day to get organized for their geographic farming is pretty realistic. But what the geo leads does is it can help not just find the contact information so you can better mail or better call or however you want to contact those people within your geographic farm.
Yeah.
But there's filters on our tool. So you could pull up a neighborhood and say, well, show me this neighborhood, but I kind of want to see how many people are new in this neighborhood versus how many people have been here for a long time. So we have filters based on length of residency in the market, so that you could kind of go into your market, find out which neighborhoods may have higher turnover, and choose that as your geographic farm. So while the hours may be realistic to get organized, if they were to invest that 7.5 hours that you said with our tool, not only are they going to be able to identify, rooftops and names and phone numbers and addresses and how many of them are non-owner occupied and all the other information that we give you on the neighborhood, but they could really narrow it down to optimize that geographic farm. It would be akin to a farmer going out and going, okay, well, if I had the right tool, I would test the types of soil, to make sure I'm going to get the best output in my crops. And our tool helps people do that. The Storm Dialer is a dialer, and it helps you do what, again, it's about saving time and creating efficiency. And Storm also creates a little bit of accountability, and I'll explain that. But Storm, again, is a dialer. I'll try to answer real quickly almost every question that will come up. This is not like the dialers that people are using that are spamming your phone. Meaning, this is not a machine that's calling and then tries to connect. This creates a one-to-one connection between you and who you're calling, but it's going to make that process much more efficient. You're going to be able to record voicemails and have those pre-recorded. You're going to be able to automatically skip disconnected numbers, and then the whole dialer is set up to help you to filter the numbers that you want and can call versus the numbers that maybe you shouldn't call, and everything else. So it just makes the whole process easier. I think the best benefit of having a dialer, besides the time and efficiency, is accountability. I loved how the vulnerability of saying, dude, I was freaked out in the beginning of what you were saying, Chris, when you were hesitant to call. Cold calling freaks people out, gives them anxiety. We see that all the time. And what happens is we have these protective behaviors around calling that prohibit us from making money. And so what happens is people sit down, and even if they have a tool and REDX is saying, okay, here's the person you should call, they go, okay, I need to go get, fill up my coffee. And then they come back to the desk and they think about calling. They go, oh, you know what? I'm going to check on that one listing I have and see how many views I have there. And, I'm going to check in here. And there's all these behaviors. What the dialer does is, once you narrow down the list you want to call, once you hit go, it's going.
Yeah.
And it prevents these distractions that prolong. I mean, if you're making 209 calls based on that study manually, the time is not in the calls. The time is between the calls that you are having a mental argument every time to say, okay, just dial that number. And the dialer allows you to get through that and not have that. So it creates some accountability that actually increases your output.
Mm. That's fantastic, and that accountability, especially early on, is so important. Now, we have an offer for folks who are a part of the webinar today. Normally, like we saw on the screen before, expired leads is $60 a month, geo leads is $50 a month, for sale by owners $40 a month, and the storm dialer is $100 a month. But for attendees of the webinar, we are going to do expireds, for sale by owners, and geo leads all for $109 a month. That's thank you so much. That's on behalf of our attendees. Thank you for that offer. That's really great.
You're welcome. The offer comes because they now have a plan, and if they will, and our hope is that they're going to implement that plan and just say, okay, I've got a plan for 60 days, and I'll do it. And we know that with the tool combined with the plan you gave them, that they'll get the results they're hoping for. Yeah.
You are also going to throw in 30 days of free storm dialer too, which is another $100 value. So we're up to $141 in savings, but you're also going to waive that setup fee of $149. So we are now at am I doing this right? $290 in savings just for a single month at this point.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Curtis, before I announce the name of the person who is going to be receiving 90 days of this package plus the storm dialer, I just wanted to ask you one more question. I've heard you say on previous webinars and in other scenarios, I've heard you use the phrase prospecting is your retirement plan. Can you, I thought that was a really interesting thing to say, and I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what you mean by that. What do you mean prospecting is your retirement plan?
Well, I think real estate seems to be an atypical business. If any other, let's say REDX started, it's not unlike we have a product that we're going to sell, so we figure out your widget. Well, in real estate, that's real estate, so that's easy. But in a traditional business, somebody would say, okay, well, where do we start? Well, we need to go find clients, right? And we're going to start marketing, and we're going to, maybe you throw up billboards, or maybe I got my start in sales, 20 plus years ago, knocking doors and selling stuff door to door. And they had these, big crews of door knockers. So in other businesses, it's not a strange thing to think where you start in business is proactively going out and finding business. But somehow in real estate, there's this fallacy that you get your license and you let everybody know that now you're a licensed agent and the business is just going to start to come. Well, this isn't Field of Dreams. It doesn't work like that. And you've got to proactively go out and get business. But we also have another issue in our industry of new agents go to the successful agents and they say, hey, successful agent, tell me what you're doing in your business. They go, well, all my business comes from my sphere of influence, my past clients, repeat customers, friends, and family. And the new agent goes, oh, okay, well, that's where I'm going to start. The better question that new agents should ask those successful agents is, what did you do in the beginning of your career so that all of your business can come from your sphere of influence? An interview I did with an agent recently for 9 years. He prospected every day for 9 years. Well, now he's been in the business 20 years and he doesn't even have to try, right? Because after 20 years, he's got the next generation of people calling him, buying homes from him. Well, he has that network because he spent so much time prospecting expireds, for sale by owners, geographic farms, so that he could put people in his network so that would eventually be. Well, he doesn't have to prospect anymore.
Yeah.
He may never have to pick up the phone again because he's got such a network of people
Mm.
that the business just keeps coming.
Yeah.
So you don't have to build a business that's dependent on prospecting. But if you want to
Mm-hmm.
retire in real estate, if you want to have a book of business that's value and has value, you have to prospect at the beginning to be able to have that plan. Otherwise, you're just starting at zero every day, and it's a grind. And as soon as you retire, so does your commission. But
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way if people prospect.
That's really insightful, and I love the idea that the hard work that you're putting in early on will pay you dividends later on. That's really powerful. Well, hey guys, I want to make sure that we get to some time where you can ask us some questions and help us help you provide some insight into real estate prospecting and into real estate in general. But before we get there, I want to make an announcement on the person who is going to be receiving our giveaway here. Our excuse me, our 90 days of free access to the REDX package plus the Storm Bryler. From Weston, Florida, we've got Amaya Sajonero. Excuse me if I mispronounced that, Amaya. Congratulations, Amaya. We're so excited that you're going to be taking on all these free tools for 90 days. So excited for everybody else also that you will be getting such a fantastic discount. If our admins can message Amaya privately and make sure that she knows all the details on how to redeem that, that would be fantastic. As we're getting into the Q&A, here's just a quick rundown of what we're sending you home with, guys. Sending you home with a softening letter template, for sale by owner scripts, expired listing scripts, geo-prospecting scripts, follow-up text scripts, postcard ideas, door-knocking best practices. And this is one I want to make sure I hammer here. As a part of this webinar, you also get an exclusive invite to the Close Facebook group. Okay, we have started a Facebook group specific to real estate prospecting. And I know that this is a challenging plan that you're going to need some help with, some accountability on. You're going to need some encouragement and some new content. And we have started a Facebook group that we can all join together, that you can come in, you can ask questions, we can help each other, we can commiserate, we can tell some war stories. Really hope that you guys join us on Facebook. We're going to have a link to that Facebook group in your post-webinar materials, and we'll also be sending it out via email. Our plan is we'd like to start prospecting with you guys on July 1st. Let's make July 1st the start of your new real estate prospecting direction. So join the Facebook group. Let's start on July 1. You're also going to walk away with this fantastic discount from REDX. So lots that you're getting today, and we're so excited to be able to provide that for you. But we're also excited to provide some answers. So we're going to open it up right now to some Q&A. We got some great Q&A questions that came in during the presentation that we'll knock out, but we're also going to be taking some live questions here. So if you've got questions, please shout them out in the chat. I know that we are now over the 1 hour time limit, so if you need to be boogieing, we totally understand. But if you'd like to stick around, do some Q&A, we would love to answer some questions, and we're going to answer the ones that we saw in the chat as well. So let's see here. Let's start. I'm going to start with one of the questions that we got during the presentation. Himang, yes, the resources that were mentioned are all going to be provided to you via email. So no stress about having to hunt those down. You will get our resource guide. Cheryl, maybe Curtis, you can jump in on this one. Cheryl asked us what the online training options were at REDX. What kind of training do options do agents have there?
Great. So we have quite a bit of training. We don't have any long-term contracts. So our best interest is to make sure people are utilizing the tools of prospecting. So when people first sign up, they're going to, at least for 90 days, receive quite a bit of information Not just about the technology, but about prospecting.
Great.
And that goes for 90 days. Plus, we have in-house live support, live chat. We have a customer forum that has many thousands of agents, prospecting agents on there, and that may be the best resource. So we have quite a bit of stuff for everybody who signs up.
Wonderful, wonderful. Emile Leplatinier, I want to bring you into the conversation. We haven't heard from Emile yet. Emile, are you with us here?
I am indeed.
Fantastic. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Emile, I bet you are and you don't realize it, because Emile is the voice, the genius behind a lot of the content that we have on the close. Emile is, unlike me, who is a relatively rural real estate guy up in northern Michigan, Emile is a real estate expert straight from the heart of New York City. And wanted to ask you, Emile, we got a question about prospecting in small towns versus prospecting in big cities. Is prospecting something that's done in the major metropolitan areas the same way that you think it's done, that maybe it's done outside of the city, or what is your experience with prospecting being done kind of on a major metropolitan level there?
Well, the biggest difference in Manhattan is that, if you're an agent and you just happen to show up and you're breathing and you're not don't have an actively repellent personality, no, I'm serious. You can close, a good amount of rentals every month. You can make $75,000 to $100,000 pretty easily just by showing up. Of course, the difference is that the people who go on to make $200,000, $300,000, I personally known agents that have cleared more than $1 million, and I'm talking about income, not GCI. Those people, all they do is prospect.
Wow. Okay.
I think the biggest difference is the way that they start out. Generally is going to be through their sphere of influence first.
Yeah.
So getting those, those early deals, kind of getting yourself into a building, those are generally going to come from your sphere of influence, because a lot of people in New York are very wary of cold calling. They're wary of strangers in general. Real estate agents don't exactly have the best reputation here in Manhattan, unfortunately. But once you've made that initial contact, it's really kind of a building by building process.
Gotcha.
The difficulty again is that you're talking about homes and houses. It's very easy to send out mailers, but you're talking about doorman buildings. You're getting your letter into every single mailbox is going to be a challenge, unless sometimes you have an in. You know the doorman. You have a friend. You close a deal in the building. It makes it a lot easier. But basically, once you're in a building, people can actually work. Like, I know one agent that basically works one building complex. He works Tudor City, and that's it. I mean, granted, this is like 5 buildings. There's, I don't know, 1,000 apartments or something in the building. Relatively low ends. You're talking about 1 bedrooms for $350,000, $400,000. Studios in around there too. But he only works that one building, and that's all the prospecting he does is within that one building. So the geographic farms are like, you don't have to, hey, I do the west side of Manhattan. You'd be a crazy person because there's millions of people there. So it's a lot more focused. And I think, but the same basic strategies apply. You're getting on the phone, you're getting your foot in the door, and you're building relationships. And those relationships are you have to maintain them, otherwise you're not going to get any deals. But so you're doing the same principles. Although it's a little bit more challenging, just because again, we're talking about buildings rather than houses.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The game does change as your density goes up. I wanted to jump in. We had another question from during the presentation about the map on REDX. Now, yes, there is a map in the GeoLeads tool on REDX. Unfortunately, the map doesn't, though the map has a ton of different features to it. It's not like Google Maps, where you can put in drive routes and map out exactly how to get from one place to the other. But it does have a lot of features to it. Curtis, can you speak to the map on GeoLeads in the GeoLeads tool? What are some of the best practices, or maybe like one or two of the
Sure.
best practices on how to use that tool effectively.
So the map, more than anything, is where you're just going to draw boundaries, either around a neighborhood or select a point. So, like if you were wanting to find, the nearest 50 homes to your open house, so you could invite all the neighbors to an open house, you could say, give me the nearest 50 homes around this address. But so it's a finding tool in terms of what it is, to find the rooftops so that you can then say, okay, give me all the owner information of all the homes in this area that I've identified.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
So just to throw this out here, so because I would love to any technical questions, if they call in, and make sure they're on the webinar so that they can make sure they get the deal. We have a pretty soft sales guys. They're nobody needs to be intimidated. They're not going to
That's
beat
great.
you over the head to try to close you. So if they have technical questions, they can get much more detailed on the phone if they wanted to call in.
That's fantastic. That's actually a great point here, guys. We are going to, in your resources, you will have the contact information for REDX, including the telephone number and exactly how you need to identify yourself as one of the exclusive recipients of this discount for REDX. So when you get your after webinar resources, you'll have the telephone number there. You can call in. There's a lot. I see a lot of technical questions in our questions list. Things like, how does REDX give email addresses, or tell me more about how the storm dialer works, that sort of thing. We are happy to continue to answer these questions, but these things, if we would love for you to be able to have some feedback with the person answering those questions as well. So, we encourage you to to utilize that phone number, call in, talk to the sales specialist with REDX, and they'll be able to give you the skinny on that. And if we can get either Miranda or Lily to drop into the comments the telephone number and the extension for where attendees need to be calling in order to get that would be great. That way, if you've got questions about that technical stuff right now, you can grab your phone and start dialing. I also wanted to ask one other, let's see here, I'm looking at my list of questions, lots of great questions here. We do have one other interesting question here that I want to make sure that I address, and that is, how do we stay on top of this? What if I fall behind for a week? What if I what if I miss a week of prospecting or miss half of the plan? Can I keep going? And the answer is yes, guys. You definitely can keep going. This program is all about establishing consistency, and I get it. We're not robots. Nobody's perfect. You're not going to have a perfect week probably every week. I wish that could be the case, and maybe you can totally clear your schedule and have a perfect week for 9 weeks in a row. But chances are that's not going to be the case, and that's okay. That's why we've got the Facebook group working, and why that is so exciting and important. Just to kind of give you guys a little insight on this, that Facebook group, that's not going to be something that we just kind of throw out there and have you guys help yourself or ask questions for one another. No, I'm going to be a part of that Facebook group right there with you. Every week, I'll be jumping in there. I'll be answering questions, be providing you some content. I'll be helping you, remind you what you've got going this week, giving you some best practices on what you can do for that week's agenda to make sure that you are knocking out the tasks and getting those listing appointments. And I want to be there to hear about your frustrations, to hear about your successes. It's going to be a really collaborative approach to that, what Curtis mentioned, which is that accountability end of things. And Lily, looks like Lily just dropped a link to that Facebook group there. Miranda also included the telephone number and the extension there for those technical questions. So you've got some spots, some resources for that. Other questions? Anybody else have questions? I know we're getting on. It's 3:15 now, so I know that we're 3:15 Eastern. We're at the hour 15 mark. So understand we're all busy folks. If you need to go, certainly go. But I want to make sure that we're answering questions if you've got them. Cheryl, so glad that you enjoyed the webinar. Really glad that you came here today. Prospecting is all about doing this stuff consistently. It's about getting out of your comfort zone, making that outbound communication. Remember, lead generation is inbound. You're waiting for people to call you. I think lead generation has its place, just like business from referrals and from repeat clients. But those are businesses that you are not directly in control of. You are in control of your own success when it comes to prospecting. So glad that you came and you found some value. Other questions? Anything else that we can answer right now? Let's see here. Yeah, Hannah, thank you for detailing that one more time for us. That REDX offer in really good shape. That's a great savings. Rosanna, I'm a home stager and found so much value. I'm so glad, Rosanna. In my opinion, I can get more clients to realize that staging before getting an agent saves headaches, and everyone would be great. Thanks, Rosanna, for coming. We appreciate it. No problem, Carol. We will give you some assistance on getting into that Facebook group. Awesome. Okay, any other questions? If you've got questions, let's shout them out. If you don't, no problem. We're so glad that you guys are here. So glad that you joined us for our webinar today. Yeah, all right, guys. I think that's gonna do it for us, but you know what? Like I said, the conversation is not over. We are just moving it over to the Facebook group. So if you have questions that come up or things that didn't get answered in the chat today, or that you didn't get answered from our from the awesome folks over at REDX, please bring them over to the Facebook group. I would love to engage with you there and see. Jane, I'm sorry. I guess I'm double checking. I don't want to miss your question here. Let me go back and just do a quick double check. You know what, Jane? Why don't you go ahead and shout out your question here, because I don't have it right in front of me and I don't want to miss it. Go ahead and write it in the chat for me. That's a great. Jane, while we're waiting for your question, I'm going to answer Tanumbi's question. Brokerages, I'm sure there are options for brokerages if they want to talk to REDX. I bet you Curtis would talk to those folks. We've talked about it on the agent level here. Curtis, quickly, are there brokerage level options for REDX?
Yep, there are. If they want to call in and if they're a broker and talk to one of the sales agents about different options there, we're happy to do that. Okay, great. And Jane, now I see your question. You are already a subscriber to the expired listings tool. That's great. Is there a deal for me on the rest? Jane, I am not sure exactly the answer to that question, but we're going to talk behind the scenes and we'll make sure that we get an answer for you on that. Okay, if I can have one of the admins message Jane directly and get her contact information, so we make sure that. Oh, look, Hannah just said that they'd be happy to upgrade you, Jane, to that package for $109 a month. So that's fantastic. Thanks, guys, over at REDX. That's amazing. And with that, guys, we're gonna sign off for the day. But like I said, the questions don't have to stop here. Feel free to move over to the Facebook group, and we'll keep the conversation going there. Once again, I'm Chris Linsell with theclose.com, and on behalf of Emil and Curtis, thank you guys so much for being here. It's been really fun, super informative, and we hope that you have a ton of success with your prospecting. Thanks again, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye now.